Get your broke black ass out of here before I call the cops. Brad Morrison's finger jabs inches from James Wellington's face as his voice explodes across Premium Motors' showroom. 20 customers freeze in horror. Sir, I'm interested in purchasing. Purchasing what? With your welfare money? Brad sneers. These cars cost more than your whole family makes. Stop pretending you can afford anything here and get out. I have cash and financing pre-approval. James responds calmly, producing documents. Brad slaps the papers away. I don't care what fake documents you printed. This is a luxury dealership, not a homeless shelter. Security! The showroom falls silent. Customers back away. Other salespeople cringe. But Brad has no idea what he's just unleashed. The man he's publicly humiliating is about to obliterate his career and revolutionize an entire industry. Have you ever been told you don't belong somewhere you had every right to be? 45 minutes earlier, James Wellington had walked through those same glass doors with quiet confidence. At 45, the former Army intelligence colonel carried himself with the kind of measured authority that comes from years of systematic problem-solving and organizational analysis. Premium Motors represented everything successful people aspired to own. Gleaming luxury vehicles lined the 500-square-meter showroom under warm lighting. Soft jazz played as well-dressed customers browsed Mercedes, BMW, and Porsche models ranging from $80,000 to $300,000. The dealership's marketing promised excellence in every interaction and service that matches our vehicle's prestige. James approached the midnight blue sedan with genuine interest, running his hand along the pristine paint. His movements showed familiarity with luxury vehicles, the way he checked the interior stitching, examined the engine specifications, and noted the premium features. This wasn't someone overwhelmed by expensive cars. This was someone who understood quality. Beautiful craftsmanship, he murmured, admiring the hand-stitched leather. The torque specs on this model are impressive for the weight class. Nearby, Brad Morrison finished with a silver-haired couple purchasing their third BMW. At 38, Brad prided himself on reading customers within seconds of their arrival. Designer clothes meant serious buyers. Hesitant browsers meant time wasters. In his 5 years at Premium Motors, this system had served him well, or so he believed. The elderly couple signed their paperwork as Brad beamed. Congratulations on your new 7 Series. You're going to love the ride quality. As they departed, Brad noticed James examining the sedan's engine bay with obvious knowledge. For a brief moment, something flickered across his expression. Was this customer different? But old habits die hard, and Brad's assumptions quickly solidify. James's phone buzzed. Wellington speaking. Sir, the quarterly reports are ready for your review, came the professional voice through the speaker. Thank you, Patricia. Push the board meeting to Thursday. I'm conducting field research today. Understood, sir. Shall I reschedule your 3 o'clock meeting with the acquisition team? Yes. This assessment is taking longer than expected, but it's providing exactly the data I needed. James ended the call and returned to examining the vehicle. He opened the driver's door, settled into the leather seat, and tested the adjustment controls with the practiced efficiency of someone accustomed to luxury automobiles. Meanwhile, Brad approached a young white couple browsing nearby. Good afternoon. I'm Brad Morrison. What brings you in today? We're looking for something reliable but luxurious, the man replied. Perfect. Let me show you some options that would be ideal for your lifestyle. For the next 20 minutes, Brad provided enthusiastic service, detailed explanations, test drive arrangements, financing options. His energy was infectious, his knowledge comprehensive. This was Brad at his professional best. James watched this interaction with keen interest, occasionally glancing at his phone to make notes. His expression remained neutral, but his observations were methodical. Customer approach techniques, response times, product knowledge demonstration, service quality metrics. A second couple arrived, also white, also well-dressed. Brad immediately acknowledged them with a warm smile and a promise to assist them shortly. When a Hispanic family entered, Brad offered a polite nod but continued focusing on his current customers. James noticed everything. The subtle differences in greeting warmth, the variation in attention levels, the unconscious bias patterns that most people would miss but that his trained eye caught immediately. His phone buzzed again. This time he stepped away to take the call privately. Wellington Enterprises, this is Patricia. Patricia, it's James. Add premium motors to the priority assessment list. The patterns I suspected are even more pronounced than our preliminary data suggested. Should I prepare the standard intervention protocols, sir? Not yet. I need complete documentation first. This has to be airtight when we proceed. Understood. How much longer do you estimate? Give me another hour. If my hypothesis is correct, we'll have everything we need for a comprehensive case study. James returned to the sedan, now with renewed purpose. This wasn't just about purchasing a vehicle anymore, though he genuinely needed new cars for his executive team. This was about documenting systemic issues that could serve as a catalyst for industry-wide change. He opened the hood again, this time taking photos of specific components. His knowledge of automotive engineering was evident in which details captured his attention. Premium engine components, advanced safety systems, luxury appointments that justified the price point. Brad finished with his second set of customers and finally noticed James still examining the same vehicle. Something about the black man's persistence irritated him. In Brad's experience, serious buyers made decisions quickly. Window shoppers lingered indefinitely, wasting valuable time. Can I help you with something? Brad's tone carried subtle impatience. Yes, I'd like information about financing options and availability for immediate delivery. This particular model starts at $184,000 before options. Brad's emphasis on the price was unmistakable. I understand. I'm prepared to move forward today with the right terms. Brad studied James more carefully. The suit was expensive, probably $3,000 or more. The watch was definitely luxury Swiss. The leather briefcase showed quality craftsmanship, but Brad's assumptions ran deeper than surface appearances. Let me check our current inventory, Brad said, walking toward his desk rather than engaging further. James waited patiently, using the time to observe the showroom dynamics. Other salespeople worked with customers of various backgrounds, but patterns emerged. Response times varied. Enthusiasm levels differed. Service quality fluctuated based on customer demographics in ways that probably violated company policy. His phone buzzed with a text. Legal team standing by for documentation review, Patricia. James smiled slightly and typed back, proceeding as planned. This will be educational for everyone involved. 25 minutes had now passed since James's arrival. In that time, Brad had completed 2 sales consultations, greeted 4 new customers, and essentially ignored the one person who had expressed specific purchase interest. The stage was set. The patterns were documented. The evidence was accumulating. What happened next would transform not just Brad Morrison's career, but the entire culture of premium motors and dozens of dealerships across the country. But first, James needed to see exactly how far this would go. 28 minutes of systematic neglect was about to escalate into something far more dangerous for Brad Morrison's career than he could possibly imagine. James approached Brad's desk, where the salesman was shuffling through paperwork with theatrical importance. Excuse me, I'd like to discuss that sedan. Do you have a few minutes? Brad didn't look up. I'll be with you in a minute. His tone suggested James was interrupting something crucial, though he was clearly organizing already sorted brochures. James waited patiently as Brad continued his performance of being too busy for 30 more seconds. Finally, Brad glanced up with obvious reluctance. Yeah, what did you need? I'm interested in purchasing the midnight blue sedan. I'd like to discuss financing options and take a test drive. Brad leaned back in his chair, sizing James up with unconcealed skepticism. Are you sure you're looking in the right place? Those cars start at $184,000. Yes, I'm aware of the pricing. I have my driver's license and insurance information ready. James produced a leather wallet containing pristine documents. Brad barely glanced at the papers. Okay, but I should mention these vehicles require substantial down payments. Most customers need significant financing approval. I understand. That's why I'd like to discuss the options available. Something in James's calm persistence irritated Brad further. In his experience, customers who couldn't afford luxury cars eventually revealed themselves through hesitation, questions about cheaper alternatives, or obvious discomfort with pricing. James showed none of these signs, which somehow made Brad more suspicious rather than less. Let me ask you this. Brad said, his voice taking on a condescending edge. What's your budget range? Because I don't want to waste either of our time if we're not in the same ballpark. I prefer to hear about the vehicle's features and financing structure before discussing specific numbers. Brad's expression hardened. This was exactly the kind of evasive answer he expected from time wasters. Look, I appreciate you coming in, but these cars are serious investments. The insurance alone probably costs more than most people's car payments. I'm prepared for the full ownership costs. Are you pre-approved for financing somewhere? I have several options available. Brad stood up, his patience exhausted. Okay, here's the thing. I've been doing this for 5 years, and I can usually tell when someone's genuinely ready to buy versus just looking around. Maybe you should start with something more practical. There's a Honda dealer about 2 miles down the road. James remained perfectly calm. I'm specifically interested in this Mercedes model. Could we please discuss the test drive procedure? Test drives require proof of income and insurance verification. Do you have recent pay stubs? I can provide whatever documentation you require. Brad walked over to where James stood beside the sedan, his body language becoming more aggressive. Listen, buddy, I'm trying to be nice here, but these cars aren't for everyone. They require serious money, like $200,000 cash or perfect credit with substantial income verification. I understand the requirements. Do you? Because I'm looking at someone who probably makes $40,000 a year asking about a car that costs 5 times that amount. Brad's voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby customers. James's expression didn't change. I'd prefer to discuss my financial qualifications with someone in management, if this is how you typically handle sales inquiries. Management? Brad laughed harshly. Management is going to ask the same questions I'm asking. Look, I'm trying to save you embarrassment here. Why don't you think about what you can actually afford and come back when you're ready for a realistic conversation? A middle-aged white couple browsing nearby exchanged uncomfortable glances. The woman whispered something to her husband, who shook his head in disgust. Sir, I'd simply like the same service you provided to your previous customers, James said quietly. My previous customers had realistic expectations and didn't waste my time with fantasy shopping. How do you know my expectations are unrealistic? Brad's voice grew louder, attracting more attention. Because I know exactly what kind of customer can afford these cars, and it's not someone who needs to think about it for 30 minutes without providing basic financial information. James pulled out his phone and made a quick note. This didn't go unnoticed by Brad, who interpreted it as a sign of weakness. What are you doing, writing a complaint? Good luck with that. Any manager's going to ask why you couldn't answer simple qualifying questions. I'm documenting our interaction for future reference. Future reference? Brad's laugh turned nasty. What future? You think you're going to come back here with some imaginary money and demand service? This isn't how luxury car sales work. More customers were staring now. A young Hispanic family near the Porsche display looked uncomfortable and began moving toward the exit. An elderly black woman with her adult son pointed in their direction, clearly disturbed by what they were witnessing. Maybe, Brad continued, his voice now carrying across the showroom, you should try somewhere more suited to your circumstances. There are plenty of used car lots that would be happy to work with your budget. What circumstances would those be? James asked quietly. You know exactly what I mean. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. James took another note on his phone. Brad's irritation exploded. Stop playing games. Either you can afford a $200,000 car or you can't, and based on this conversation, we both know the answer. I'd like to speak with your general manager. The general manager doesn't have time for this nonsense. He's dealing with actual customers who don't need their hands held through basic financial reality. Then perhaps you could call him and let him make that decision. Brad stepped closer, his voice dropping to what he thought was a threatening whisper but was clearly audible to nearby customers. Listen carefully. I'm being patient because I'm a professional, but my patience has limits. You're not buying anything today. You're not buying anything next week. So stop wasting everyone's time with this charade. What charade would that be? Pretending you belong in a place like this? The words hung in the air like a physical slap. Several customers gasped audibly. A well-dressed white couple immediately headed for the exit. the woman muttering absolutely disgraceful to her husband. James's calm smile never wavered. Could you clarify what you mean by that? Brad realized he'd crossed a line, but instead of backing down, his anger intensified. You know exactly what I mean. This is a luxury dealership, not a place for people who can't afford what we're selling. And you've determined I can't afford these vehicles based on what criteria? Based on 30 minutes of watching you ask questions without providing any real financial information. Based on your obvious discomfort with the pricing. Based on... Brad caught himself before saying what he was really thinking. Based on what? James pressed gently. Based on common sense. Brad's voice cracked slightly. Look, I'm trying to be professional here, but you're making this impossible. Just go somewhere more appropriate, okay? James made another note on his phone. Define appropriate. Somewhere that matches your actual budget and expectations. Somewhere that works with your kind of situation. My kind of situation? Brad was spiraling now, his words becoming more reckless with each exchange. You know what? I'm done with this conversation. I have real customers to help, people who don't need to ask 20 questions about cars they obviously can't afford. He started to walk away, but James's next words stopped him cold. I'll be following up on this interaction through proper channels. Brad spun around. Proper channels? What's that supposed to mean? It means I'll be filing a formal complaint about the service I've received today. A complaint? About what? About me trying to save you from embarrassing yourself? About being denied equal service based on assumptions about my financial capacity? Brad's face flushed red. Equal service. I've been more than patient with someone who clearly doesn't understand how this business works. How does this business work exactly? It works by serving customers who can actually afford what we're selling. It works by not wasting hours on people who are just here to waste time. James's phone buzzed. He glanced at it briefly, a text from Patricia. Standing by for Phase 2 implementation. He typed back quickly. Proceeding to conclusion. Prepare documentation. Brad watched this exchange with growing suspicion. Who are you texting? Some friend complained about the mean car salesman? I'm coordinating my next steps regarding this situation. Your next steps? Brad laughed bitterly. Here's a step for you. Walk out that door and don't come back until you can afford to shop here. The showroom had grown noticeably quieter. Conversation stopped as customers strained to hear the escalating confrontation. Even other salespeople paused their activities to watch. James pocketed his phone and looked directly at Brad. Thank you for clarifying your position so thoroughly. This has been very educational. Educational? What's educational about wasting my time? You'll understand soon enough. Brad's eyes narrowed. Is that some kind of threat? Not at all. Simply an observation that this interaction will have consequences neither of us can ignore. Consequences? What consequences? You think filing some complaint is going to matter? You think management is going to take your side over a 5-year veteran who brings in 6 figures annually? James smiled that same mysterious smile that had been unsettling Brad throughout their conversation. We'll see. We'll see what? What exactly do you think is going to happen here? I think, James said quietly, that you're about to learn something very important about making assumptions. Brad felt a chill run down his spine, though he couldn't say why. Something in James's tone suggested this wasn't over, not by a long shot. But Brad's pride wouldn't let him back down now. He'd gone too far to retreat. You know what? I think we're done here. I'm going to help customers who actually belong in this showroom. That's an interesting choice of words, James observed. It's an accurate choice of words. This is premium motors, not some charity case operation. And there it was. The line that would destroy everything Brad Morrison thought he knew about power, respect, and who really belonged where. James Wellington's smile widened just slightly. Thank you. I couldn't have asked for a clearer statement of your position. The trap was set. The evidence was recorded. The consequences were about to begin. But Brad Morrison still had no idea what was coming for him. James Wellington walked toward the exit with measured precision. Behind him, the showroom buzzed with uncomfortable energy as customers processed what they'd witnessed. The elderly white couple shook their heads in disgust. The Hispanic family had already left. Brad Morrison straightened his tie, forcing a confident smile. In his mind, he'd handled a difficult situation professionally. Time waster eliminated. Problem solved. Outside, James sat in his German sedan and made a phone call. Patricia, Phase 1 is complete. How extensive was the documentation, sir? Beyond our projections. Clear audio, multiple witnesses, escalating behavior demonstrating systematic bias. Should I initiate a formal complaint process? Yes, route through legal first. Handle this by the book. No shortcuts. 20 minutes later, General Manager Tom Rodriguez returned from lunch to find an unusual atmosphere. Conversation seemed muted. Salespeople looked uncomfortable. Everything okay? Tom asked Sarah Williams. Check with Brad about his last customer interaction. It got heated. Tom approached Brad's desk. Sarah mentioned an incident. Not an incident, just a guy who couldn't take no for an answer. Wanted to test drive cars he obviously couldn't afford. I handled it professionally. Tom made a mental note to review security footage later. 2 hours later, his phone rang. Mr. Rodriguez, this is Catherine Walsh from Wellington Holdings Legal Department. We're filing a formal discrimination complaint regarding an incident at your location today. Tom's blood pressure spiked. Could you repeat that? One of our executives experienced racially motivated discrimination from your sales staff. We have extensive documentation. Wellington Holdings. I'm not familiar with that company. I'd suggest you familiarize yourself quickly. Documentation will be forwarded within the hour. Tom immediately pulled security footage. What he saw made his stomach drop. The cameras captured everything. Brad's dismissive body language, escalating hostility, clear audio of increasingly hostile comments. He called the corporate immediately. We have a code red situation, discrimination lawsuit incoming. While on hold, Tom researched Wellington Holdings, a $2 billion investment firm. CEO James Wellington, former military officer with an impeccable reputation for ethical business practices and systematic organizational reform. This wasn't someone who filed frivolous complaints. This was someone with resources to destroy Premium Motors. At 4:17 p.m., an email arrived. Formal discrimination complaint, Premium Motors downtown location. The complaint was masterful. Detailed documentation, legal precedent citations, witness identification, clear evidence of pattern discrimination. The final paragraph made Tom's blood run cold. Wellington Holdings reserves the right to pursue all available legal remedies and conduct comprehensive audits across the Premium Motors network to determine scope of systemic issues. Tom realized Brad had triggered a crisis that would reshape the entire company. Meanwhile, Brad's colleagues began discussing the incident among themselves. That was really uncomfortable to watch, Marcus Brooks told Sarah Williams. I've never seen Brad get that aggressive with a customer before. The guy seemed legitimate to me. His suit was expensive, nice watch, professional demeanor. Brad kept saying he was wasting time, but the customer never seemed like he wasn't serious. Word spread quickly through the dealership staff. By closing time, everyone knew something significant had happened, though none realized the full scope of what was coming. Tom spent the evening reviewing policy manuals, legal precedents, and crisis management protocols. Every angle he examined made the situation look worse. Brad Morrison drove home, unaware his professional life was about to implode. He'd forgotten about James Wellington, dismissing the interaction as another difficult customer who couldn't handle being told the truth. That ignorance would last exactly 18 more hours. Tomorrow morning, Brad would discover he'd just had the most expensive conversation of his career. And James Wellington? He was just getting started. At 8:43 a.m. the next morning, Tom Rodriguez's phone rang with a call that would change everything he thought he knew about power, ownership, and the catastrophic mistake his dealership had just made. Tom, this is Regional Manager Patterson. I need you to sit down for this conversation. I'm sitting. How bad is the legal exposure? Tom, do you know who Wellington Holdings is? Some investment firm. Big enough to cause us problems, obviously. Patterson's voice carried a weight that made Tom's stomach clench. Wellington Holdings isn't just some investment firm. They're our parent company's largest shareholder. They own 38% of Premium Motors International. The words hit Tom like a physical blow. What? What did you just say? 6 months ago, Wellington Holdings acquired controlling interest in our entire dealership network. The CEO who got discriminated against in your showroom yesterday. James Wellington owns our company. Tom's vision blurred as the full scope of the disaster became clear. Oh my God, we're all fired. It gets worse. Wellington Holdings specializes in acquiring underperforming companies and transforming them through systematic culture change. James Wellington has a reputation for conducting undercover assessments of every business he acquires. You're telling me this was intentional? He came in specifically to test us? That's exactly what I'm telling you, and we failed in the most spectacular way possible. Tom's hands trembled as he reached for his coffee, knocking over a stack of sales reports. How long have you known? I found out at 6 this morning when corporate CEO Martinez called me in a complete panic. Apparently, the board of directors received a comprehensive report documenting not just yesterday's incident, but pattern discrimination across multiple locations. Multiple locations? Wellington has been conducting systematic audits for months. Yesterday wasn't his first visit to dealerships in our network. It was just the worst response he'd encountered. Tom stared at his computer screen, trying to process the implications. So when he said he'd be following up through proper channels, he was talking about firing everyone involved and potentially restructuring the entire company. The irony was devastating. Brad Morrison had spent 30 minutes insulting, dismissing, and publicly humiliating the one person who literally owned the building they were standing in. Patterson? What do? We pray that James Wellington is more interested in fixing problems than destroying careers, because if he wants us gone, we're gone. Today. Tom's computer chimed with an incoming email. The subject line read, Meeting Request, James Wellington, CEO Wellington Holdings. His hands shook as he opened the message. Mr. Rodriguez, I'll be visiting your location at 10 a.m. to discuss yesterday's customer service experience and its implications for Premium Motors' future operations. Please ensure Mr. Morrison is available for this conversation. J. Wellington. Tom immediately called Brad's extension. Brad, I need you in my office immediately. Sure thing, boss. What's up? Just get in here, now. 3 minutes later, Brad strolled into Tom's office with his usual confident swagger. What's the emergency? Sit down. We need to talk about your customer interaction yesterday. Brad's expression shifted to mild annoyance. The guy who filed a complaint? I told you I handled it professionally. Some people just can't accept reality about their financial limitations. Brad, I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Okay, shoot. Tom took a deep breath. The customer you insulted yesterday owns our company. Brad blinked. What? James Wellington is the CEO of Wellington Holdings. They own controlling interest in Premium Motors International. You spent 30 minutes publicly humiliating your boss's boss's boss. The color drained from Brad's face as the words sank in. That's not possible. It's not only possible, it's documented on security footage and witnessed by 20 customers. You told the owner of this dealership to get his broken black ass out of his own building. Brad's mouth opened and closed silently, like a fish gasping for air. But he didn't say anything. He didn't identify himself. How was I supposed to know? That's exactly the point, Brad. You weren't supposed to know. This was an undercover assessment of our customer service practices, and we failed catastrophically. An assessment? You mean this was all planned? Wellington Holdings conducts systematic evaluations of every company they acquire. Yesterday was our test, and you just gave the most racist, unprofessional performance in company history to the one person who can shut down this entire dealership with a phone call. Brad stood up abruptly, began pacing. This is insane. This has to be some kind of mistake. Rich guys don't go around pretending to be regular customers. Rich guys who built their reputation on ethical business practices absolutely do. James Wellington is famous for this kind of systematic assessment. He's done it at 47 companies across 12 states. 47 companies? What happened to those companies? Tom pulled up articles on his computer. Some got completely restructured, some got new management teams, some had their entire sales forces replaced, and some... Tom paused. Some got closed down entirely. Brad collapsed back into his chair. What does this mean for me? I don't know, Brad, but I can tell you that James Wellington will be here at 10 a.m. to discuss yesterday's incident, and you're going to be in that meeting. What am I supposed to say? How do I apologize for something like this? I honestly don't know if an apology is going to be enough. Brad's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it and his face went completely white. "What is it?" Tom asked. "It's from my wife. She says the local news is calling our house asking for comments about a discrimination incident at Premium Motors." Tom's heart sank. "The story's going public. How did the news find out?" "Brad, when you publicly humiliate a billionaire CEO, word gets around. James Wellington isn't just any business owner. He's nationally recognized for corporate ethics and social responsibility. This is going to be news." Brad's hands shook as he set down his phone. "Tom, I have 2 kids and a mortgage. I can't lose this job." "You should have thought about that before you assumed a black customer couldn't afford a luxury car." "But I didn't know. How could I have known?" "That's exactly the problem, Brad. You made assumptions based on race, not facts, and now those assumptions are going to cost all of us." At 9:55 a.m., a black town car pulled into the Premium Motors parking lot. Through the showroom windows, Tom and Brad watched James Wellington step out of the passenger seat, followed by 2 other individuals in business suits. James wore the same Navy suit from yesterday, but his demeanor was completely different. Yesterday, he'd been patient, almost deferential. Today, he moved with the unmistakable authority of someone who owned everything in sight. "That's him," Brad whispered, his voice barely audible. "Oh, God, that's really him?" Tom straightened his tie and tried to compose himself. "Brad, whatever happens in the next hour, do not make this worse than it already is." "How could it possibly get worse?" "Trust me, it can always get worse." James Wellington walked through the front doors of Premium Motors like he owned the place, which Tom realized with sinking dread he literally did. The transformation was complete. Yesterday's patient customer had become today's corporate authority figure, and Brad Morrison was about to face the consequences of the most expensive conversation of his career. The reckoning had arrived. James Wellington entered Premium Motors with 2 associates, a sharp-eyed woman carrying a leather portfolio and a man with a tablet documenting every detail. The showroom fell silent as staff recognized the gravity of the moment. Tom Rodriguez approached with visible nervousness. "Mr. Wellington, thank you for coming. I'm Tom Rodriguez, the general manager." "Mr. Rodriguez." James's handshake was firm, professional, devoid of warmth. "This is Catherine Walsh, our legal counsel, and David Brooks, our operations analyst. Shall we proceed to your conference room?" "Of course. Right this way." As they walked through the showroom, James observed everything with the systematic attention of someone conducting a comprehensive evaluation. Staff positioning, customer interactions, the subtle dynamics that revealed organizational culture. Brad Morrison waited in the conference room, his usual confidence replaced by barely controlled panic. When James entered, Brad's face went ashen. "Mr. Morrison," James said, taking a seat at the head of the table, "I believe we have some unfinished business from yesterday. Mr. Wellington, I had no idea who you were. If I'd known—" "Stop!" James's voice cut through Brad's stammering. "If you'd known who I was, you would have treated me differently. That's exactly the problem we're here to address." Catherine Walsh opened her portfolio. "Mr. Morrison, we have comprehensive documentation of yesterday's interaction, security footage, audio recordings, witness statements from 8 customers and 4 employees." David Brooks activated his tablet. "We've also compiled pattern analysis from similar incidents across the Premium Motors network over the past 18 months. Tom's stomach dropped. "Similar incidents." "Mr. Rodriguez, yesterday's discrimination wasn't an isolated event. Our systematic assessment has identified recurring bias patterns at 12 of your 23 locations." James leaned forward. "Mr. Morrison, let's review yesterday's interaction step by step." The conference room's large screen activated, displaying security footage with crystal-clear audio. Brad watched in horror as his own voice filled the room. "You people don't belong here. This isn't some charity case. Take your food stamps and get out." "Are you prepared to move forward today with the right terms?" James's calm voice responded from the speakers. "Purchase? With what money? Your welfare check? Look around. These cars cost more than you make in 10 years. Brad winced at each exchange, seeing his behavior from an outside perspective for the first time. The contrast was devastating. James's professional demeanor versus Brad's escalating hostility. "Mr. Morrison," James said when the footage ended, "how do you explain this interaction?" I made assumptions. I was wrong. I'm sorry." "What assumptions did you make, specifically?" Brad struggled to find words that wouldn't make things worse. I thought you couldn't afford the vehicles." "Based on what evidence? I don't know. I made a mistake." Catherine Walsh consulted her notes. "Mr. Morrison, in your 5 years at Premium Motors, you've had 3 previous complaints filed against you for similar behavior, all involving customers of color, all dismissed by management without proper investigation." Tom's face flushed. He'd known about the complaints but had accepted Brad's explanations without thorough review. "This represents systematic failure," James continued, "not just individual bias, but institutional tolerance for discrimination that violates federal law, state regulations, and basic human decency." David Brooks pulled up additional data. "Our analysis shows significant disparities in service quality based on customer demographics across your network. Average interaction time for white customers, 22 minutes. For black customers, 8 minutes. For Hispanic customers, 11 minutes. The statistics painted a damning picture of systematic bias that went far beyond Brad's individual actions. "Mr. Wellington," Tom interjected, "I take full responsibility for inadequate oversight. We clearly need better training and accountability measures." "Mr. Rodriguez, training assumes people want to change. Accountability requires consequences for those who don't." James turned back to Brad. "Mr. Morrison, yesterday you asked me what I thought was going to happen. You mocked the idea that filing a complaint would matter. You dismissed the possibility that management would take my side over a 5-year veteran who brings in 6 figures annually. Do you remember saying that?" Brad nodded miserably. "Let me explain what's going to happen. Wellington Holdings is implementing comprehensive reforms across the entire Premium Motors network. These reforms will include mandatory bias training, mystery shopper programs, customer service metrics tied to compensation, and zero-tolerance policies for discrimination." Catherine Walsh continued. "Employees who demonstrate commitment to change will receive extensive retraining and support. Those who resist or repeat discriminatory behavior will be terminated immediately. As for you specifically, Mr. Morrison," James's voice carried the finality of a verdict, "your employment with Premium Motors is terminated effective immediately. You'll receive 2 weeks severance pay, but no references or recommendations. Your behavior yesterday was recorded, witnessed, and documented. It will follow you to any future employer who conducts proper background checks." Brad's world collapsed. "Please, Mr. Wellington, I have a family. I'll do anything to make this right." "Mr. Morrison, the time to make this right was yesterday when you chose to treat a human being with dignity regardless of their race or perceived economic status. You chose differently." Tom watched in stunned silence as his top salesman's career ended with surgical precision. "However," James continued, "Wellington Holdings believes in redemption through education. Mr. Morrison, you'll be required to complete 40 hours of bias training through the Southern Poverty Law Center. You'll also perform 100 hours of community service with local civil rights organizations." "Will that help me find another job?" "That depends entirely on whether you genuinely change your perspective or simply go through the motions. Employers can tell the difference." David Brooks presented a comprehensive reform plan. "Mr. Rodriguez, these changes will be implemented across all Premium Motors locations within 90 days. Mystery shoppers will test service quality monthly. Customer satisfaction surveys will track demographic disparities. Staff compensation will include diversity and inclusion metrics. We'll also establish a customer advisory board including representatives from local NAACP chapters, Hispanic business associations, and other community organizations," Catherine added. James stood, signaling the meeting's conclusion. "Gentlemen, discrimination isn't just morally wrong. It's economically stupid. Businesses that embrace diversity and inclusion don't just do the right thing. They build stronger, more profitable organizations. Mr. Morrison, use this experience to become someone who fights against bias instead of perpetuating it." Mr. Rodriguez, prove that Premium Motors can lead this industry in ethical practices instead of trailing behind. Brad gathered his belongings with shaking hands. His career at Premium Motors was over, but perhaps his education in human dignity was just beginning. "One final point," James said as they prepared to leave. "This incident will become a case study used in business schools, sensitivity training programs, and corporate reform initiatives. Your choice, Mr. Morrison, is whether you'll be remembered as someone who learned from this experience or someone who remained unchanged by it." The meeting ended with Brad Morrison walking out of Premium Motors for the last time as an employee and James Wellington preparing to transform an entire industry's approach to customer service. The real work was just beginning. 3 months later, Premium Motors had become the automotive industry's most celebrated corporate reform story. What began with one man's racist outburst had evolved into a comprehensive transformation that was reshaping how luxury dealerships served their communities. The numbers told a remarkable story of systematic change. Customer satisfaction scores across the Premium Motors network had jumped from 67% to 92%. More importantly, the satisfaction gap between different demographic groups had virtually disappeared. White customers rated their experience at 93%, Black customers 91%, Hispanic customers 90%, Asian customers 92%. Tom Rodriguez stood in the same showroom where Brad Morrison had destroyed his career, watching a very different kind of customer interaction unfold. Maria Santos, a young Hispanic mother, was working with Derek Williams, a black salesman hired during the post-reform recruitment drive. "The safety features on this model are exceptional," Derek explained, demonstrating the collision avoidance system. "With 2 young children, these technologies can provide real peace of mind." "What about financing options?" Maria asked. "We have several programs designed for first-time luxury buyers. Let me show you what works best for your situation." The interaction was professional, respectful, and exactly what customer service should look like. No assumptions, no prejudgments, just quality service based on customer needs. The metrics were impressive across every category. Premium Motors had hired 12 new salespeople, 8 of whom were from underrepresented communities. Customer demographics had shifted dramatically. The dealership now served a 40% more diverse clientele, and sales revenue had increased by 28%. But the real measure of success went beyond numbers. In the employee break room, Sarah Williams was mentoring 2 new hires through their first week. "Remember, every customer deserves the same level of attention regardless of what they're wearing or what car they drive up in," she explained. "We've all heard stories about people in jeans and t-shirts buying 3 cars with cash. Brad Morrison's redemption arc had been surprising but genuine. The shock of losing his career had forced him to confront his own prejudices in ways he'd never done before. He'd completed the bias training program and now spoke at sensitivity workshops across the state. "I destroyed my career and hurt real people because I never examined my own biases," Brad now told audiences at training seminars. "If my story prevents one person from making the same mistakes, then some good comes from my failure." His transformation wasn't complete. Real change takes years, not months. But it was authentic enough that several organizations had begun inviting him to share his story as a cautionary tale. The Premium Motors reform model was spreading across the industry. 12 competing dealership chains had voluntarily adopted similar protocols after seeing the business results. The National Automobile Dealers Association had incorporated bias prevention training into their certification programs. James Wellington received daily calls from business leaders asking for consultation on implementing similar reforms. Harvard Business School had developed a case study titled "Leadership Through Crisis: The Wellington Model for Systematic Culture Change." Community validation provided the most meaningful recognition. The local NAACP chapter had presented Premium Motors with their Business Excellence Award. Reverend Patricia Johnson spoke at the ceremony. "This dealership has shown that businesses can profit while treating all people with dignity." Customer testimonials flooded social media with positive stories replacing the viral videos of Brad's discriminatory behavior. "Bought my dream car at Premium Motors today," posted Angela Washington, a black attorney. "Professional service from start to finish." But the most powerful testament came from an unexpected source. James Wellington stood before the quarterly staff meeting, holding a letter from the elderly white couple who had witnessed Brad's discriminatory behavior 3 months earlier. "Dear Mr. Wellington," he read aloud, "my wife and I were disgusted by what we saw that day, but we've watched the changes you've made, and we're impressed. We bought our new car from Derek Williams last week, and the service was exceptional. Legal precedent had been established as well. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission cited the Premium Motors case in new guidance documents. The Department of Justice incorporated the Wellington Protocols into their civil rights enforcement training. Industry publications ran cover stories about the Wellington effect, the measurable improvement in customer satisfaction and business performance when companies proactively addressed bias rather than simply reacting to complaints. Tom Rodriguez had been promoted to Regional Diversity and Inclusion Director, overseeing similar transformations at other dealerships. His first assignment was implementing reforms at the 12 locations where pattern discrimination had been documented. As the quarterly meeting concluded, James Wellington offered a final reflection. 3 months ago, we faced a crisis that could have destroyed this company. Instead, we chose to use that crisis as an opportunity to become better. Every person in this room now knows that respect isn't optional. It's how we do business." The applause was genuine and sustained. They have proven that justice, properly applied, doesn't just punish wrongdoing. It creates systems that prevent future harm while building stronger, more successful organizations. Premium Motors had become more than a car dealership. It has become proof that change is possible when leaders choose courage over convenience and justice over the status quo. 1 year later, James Wellington returned to the same Premium Motors showroom for an unannounced visit. This time, he came not as an undercover investigator, but as a customer genuinely needing vehicles for his expanding business operations. The transformation was immediately visible. The sales floor buzzed with diverse staff serving customers of all backgrounds with equal professionalism. Derek Williams, now the top salesperson, was helping an elderly Asian couple explore financing options for their grandson's graduation gift. Maria Santos consulted with a young black professional about luxury SUV features for her growing family. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm Jennifer Park. How can I help you today?" A Korean-American saleswoman approached James with genuine warmth. "I'm looking for 3 vehicles for my executive team, something that reflects quality and reliability." "Excellent. Let me show you some options that might work perfectly for corporate fleet needs." For the next hour, James experienced exactly what customer service should be: knowledgeable, respectful, and focused entirely on meeting his needs. No assumptions about his budget, no questions about his qualifications, just professional excellence. Tom Rodriguez spotted James and approached with a smile. "Mr. Wellington, wonderful to see you again. I hope Jennifer is taking excellent care of you." "Outstanding service, as expected. I can see the culture change has taken root. It's become part of our DNA now. We're actually training teams from other industries who want to implement similar reforms." The numbers validated the transformation. Premium Motors had become the highest-rated dealership network in customer satisfaction. Revenue had increased 35% year over year. Employee retention improved 60%. The company had received 12 industry awards for ethical business practices. Brad Morrison had completed his community service and bias education requirements. He now worked as a diversity consultant, helping businesses identify and address unconscious bias in their operations. "I destroyed my career through ignorance and prejudice," he told the audience, "but I learned that redemption is possible when you genuinely commit to change." The Wellington Protocols had been adopted by over 200 businesses across 17 states. Business schools taught case studies based on the Premium Motors transformation. Government agencies used the model for civil rights enforcement training. Community partnerships flourished. Premium Motors Scholarship Program had sent 18 students to college. Their mentorship initiative connected young people with successful professionals from diverse backgrounds. International businesses requested consultations on implementing similar reforms. The Wellington model had been featured in Harvard Business Review, Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal. As James completed his vehicle purchases, Jennifer Park handed him the keys with obvious pride. "Thank you for choosing Premium Motors. We're honored to serve you." Walking to his new vehicles, James reflected on the journey from that humiliating day to this moment of genuine progress. Change hadn't been easy or instant, but it had been comprehensive and lasting. The work continued. Discrimination still existed in countless organizations, but now there was a proven roadmap for change. Leaders who chose courage over comfort could transform entire industries. Have you ever experienced discrimination while shopping or conducting business? What would you do if you witnessed treatment like Brad's behavior? How can we all hold businesses accountable for treating everyone with dignity? The next time you face discrimination, or witness it happening to others, remember James Wellington's example. Document everything, report through proper channels, and demand systematic change rather than just individual consequences. Share your experiences with businesses that demonstrate genuine commitment to equity. Support companies that treat all customers with respect. Use your economic power to reward businesses that do right and penalize those that discriminate. Change happens when people with influence choose to use it responsibly. James Wellington didn't just seek personal justice. He built systematic reform that benefits countless future customers. If stories of justice and positive transformation inspire you, subscribe for more videos showing how ordinary people create extraordinary impact. Like this video if you believe everyone deserves dignity and respect. Progress isn't always fast, but it's always possible when people choose courage over comfort and justice over convenience. Together, we can build a world where businesses succeed by serving everyone equally, because everyone deserves respect, and companies that understand that don't just survive, they thrive.
At Black Voices Uncut, we don't polish away the pain or water down the message. We tell it like it is, because the truth deserves nothing less. If today's story spoke to you, click like, join the conversation in the comments, and subscribe so you'll be here for the next Uncut Voice.